Hi, and welcome to this discussion on the DFARS Interim Rule change that puts the CMMC program into effect. My name is Bill Wootton, and I'm with C3 Integrated Solutions. Today we're going to talk about the new rule that impacts defense contractors and puts the CMMC program into effect, as well as some additional new requirements. So let's get started.
But first, a little bit about us. We're dedicated to securing our nation's military infrastructure by protecting the cyber resources of the defense industrial base. We're a technology services provider that built around the Microsoft Cloud, and that includes both the Microsoft 365 stack as well as Azure services. Our portfolio includes onboarding, data migration, configuration, and ongoing support. We look at ourselves as a traditional managed services provider in the fact that we provide administrative and end user support as well as monitoring. But we're also a managed security service provider as well, providing advanced capabilities such as security operations center services. Our core markets are the federal and defense contractor base, and we're very much a business-to-business company, not business-to-government. Within the Microsoft ecosystem, we have 9 years experience selling, deploying, and supporting the Office 365 solution. We have over 200 customers in our portfolio, and we're one of the original 5 Microsoft partners authorized to sell GCC High to businesses without an enterprise agreement. We were the first to offer Office 365 GCC High backup earlier this year, and we are also the first to offer hosted voice services in GCC High. Earlier this year, we were also honored to be named to the 2020 Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies. Now, those that are familiar with the CMMC program know that it sets a new cybersecurity rules for the defense industrial base, and it builds upon the foundation of DFARS 7012 and NIST 800-171. All defense contractors will need to be certified in CMMC over the next 5 years, a population of over 300,000 companies. And this is not just a DoD program. Additional federal agencies are considering following the lead and adopting the CMMC program. It's also important to know that CMMC will go into effect via an interim rule on November 30th, 2020. Now, those that are familiar with DFARS 7012 know that while it had great intentions and did a lot of good, there were also some limitations to it and some challenges that led to it not being as effective as it possibly could have. The first is it was that controlled unclassified information, or CUI, was one size fits all. This meant that the most sensitive unclassified information needed to be protected in a way that stuff that maybe wasn't so as important as, say, technical drawings or export controlled data. Additionally, DFARS 7012 was self-attestation. That meant contractors got to make their own decisions as to whether or not they were really meeting both the letter of and the spirit of the rule and the compliance requirements that they were contractually obligating themselves to. In addition, with 7012, there was no enforcement. So there was no mechanism to make sure the contractors were actually doing what they said they were doing, which finally led to a competitive imbalance. Companies that made investments, did the right thing, and secured their environments wound up having a higher cost structure than those that did. Now, with the CMMC program, there's a lot of effort here to fix these items and to make this a better, stronger program that ultimately leads to a more secure supply chain. First, there are 5 levels of maturity, and as a result, 5 levels of classification for controlled unclassified information. This means federal contract information doesn't need to be protected the same as true CUI data, doesn't need to be protected the same as, say, export controlled or ITAR data. Next up, the CMMC program features audits by certified third-party auditing organizations, C3PAOs. This means an outside organization will come in and grade contractors on whether or not they are actually meeting the requirements within the program itself. One more aspect of CMMC is that certification will be required at award of contract. So every time a contract with CMMC requirements is in it, the contracting officer will need to validate and verify that the contracting awardee will actually have the right level of certification for the data and the information in that contract itself. This ultimately will level the playing field, as all organizations need to make the investments and secure their environments in a level set way. So let's talk about the interim rule. The interim rule provides a change to contractual terms the contractors agree to upon the award of a contract. The interim rule will continue in public comment into January 2021, but it actually will go into effect on November 30th, 2020. And it really impacts 4 clauses of the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations: Clause 7012, 7019, 7020, and 7021. So first, let's talk about 7012. Up until the CMMC program, DFARS 7012 was the rule that required contractors to secure their CUI data. And probably one of the surprises of the interim rule is there is no change to 7012. All contractors are still contractually obligated to provide adequate security for all covered systems. These are systems that store, process, or transit CUI data. 7012 requires contractors that have covered systems and contain CUI to meet NIST 800-171, which is based on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF. This is all about identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recovering. Cloud systems, according to DFARS 7012, must be at least the equivalent of FedRAMP moderate. And then there are also clauses C through G. This takes the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and adds one more area of focus, which is forensics. Clauses C through G are all about understanding if there is a breach, what was compromised, and how much was compromised, and how long was it compromised for. Looking at the new clauses, 7019, 20, and 21, I'll take those in reverse order. First, DFARS 7021 deploys CMMC pretty much as expected. If you're just getting new to the CMMC program, I would recommend you take a look at the video that we did, the first one we did in the series, which is an introduction to CMMC that outlines the 5 stages and everything about the CMMC program. But to summarize it here, there are 5 levels of CUI classification. C3 PAOs will audit compliance, and they will be pass-fail. That means no POAMs. The results will be stored in a system called SPRS, and it's an extended rollout. CMMC will take 5 years to roll out, which will allow the C3 PAO infrastructure to develop. Next up, DFARS 7020 requires contractors to provide access to systems, facilities, and personnel in support of assessments. It also requires a flow-down clause that all subcontractors have the results of a current assessment in SPRS at the time of award. And this applies to every subcontractor in the supply chain. This means that whether you are at a prime or second or third or 17th down the list of subcontractors in a system, you need to make sure that everyone below you in that supply chain meets the criteria and the certification levels that data corresponds to. Next up is DFARS 7019, which truly was the surprise of the interim rule. This formally established a DCMA audit program and put it into the actual contracts. Medium and high assessments, which are DCMA administered, have been going on for a couple of years now and served as a provisional program to help test out the concepts of CMMC. With 7019, however, contractors that do not have the benefit of a DCMA administered assessment still must do a self-assessment or a basic assessment. This will be their own grading of NIST 800-171, and it needs to be entered into the SPRS system. All contractors need to perform a self-assessment prior to award after November 30th. Scoring is based on the NIST guidance document, and a POAM completion date is also available. And that's a key difference here. Whereas CMMC requires no POAMs, it's pass-fail, NIST assessments in the 7019 rule have an acceptance and an understanding that not everyone will grade perfect at this point in the process. So let's talk a little bit about what all this means. Clause 7019 is really the bridge to CMMC. The NIST 800-171 self-assessments, whether it's a self-assessment or being conducted by DCMA, is what will require contractors to act immediately. If you are looking to be able to get an award or participate in a teaming arrangement as a subcontractor, you are going to need to have a self-assessment uploaded in SPRS, and you're going to need to do it quickly. To use the old phrase, it's getting late early. Folks need to have these assessments put together and have a starting point so they can continue a process of self-improvement to get to the point where they will be ready for CMMC audits. The 70/20 clause basically cleans up some loopholes. It formally provides access to systems by the government, and it extends the CMMC as well as the self-assessment programs throughout the entire supply chain. Finally, 70/21 will be a long rollout. It will be a 5-year process for the CMMC to get fully ramped up and to be involved in every contract that is out there. And this is mainly because the accreditation board that is going to manage the CMMC program really is just going to need time to ramp up and get established. There's 300,000 companies out there. You can't get to all of them right away. It's just going to take time. And while this accreditation board and while the CMMC program gets up and running, we're going to see a lot of course correction as well. This is for no fault of their own other than the fact that they are doing tremendous work. They are literally moving mountains, and there are going to be some course corrections along the way. So let's talk about what's next. How quickly do contractors need to respond? What should they be doing today? So the first piece of this really is a business evaluation. Where are your current contracts? Do you have contracts coming up for renewal? How are you set up with your prime and your subcontractor relationships? And then what is your pipeline? Do you have contract awards coming up in the next month, in the next quarter, over the next year or so? And once you understand all of this, you can evaluate your teaming relationships. Who are your strategic partners? Where do you subcontract? And where are you a prime where you have subcontractors? This is all going to determine your urgency because Clause 7019 goes into effect on November 30th, and all awards after that will have some evaluation relative to 7019 as part of them. So let's talk about next steps depending on your level of cyber maturity. If you're a mature company that has a strong investment in IT, you've made investments in cyber, you've put written policies and procedures in place, or you've gone for possibly the achievement of a comparable certification such as ISO or CMMI, you're in a really good position. You've probably done most of the heavy lifting already. You can look at conducting a basic assessment. You can report those results to the SPRS and to your partners, build a POAM around whatever gaps you find, and work on remediating them so that you can be ready for a CMMC audit. You are in a good position at this point. However, if you're not a mature company and you have historically underinvested in IT services, you currently have outdated technology, little or no cyber investment, possibly a company that has no written policies or procedures or no comparable certifications, you have a lot further to go. And in many cases, when we talk to clients in this situation, our first recommendation is to upgrade their technology. By getting technology services into place, by layering in the right cybersecurity services, you can then be in a better position to be able to meet these requirements. This typically means moving to the cloud and leveraging a strong partner such as C3 Integrated Solutions to be able to help you get down the path and get to where you need to be as fast as possible. We typically recommend writing policies off the solutions that are deployed. This allows you to know on day one that your policies and your practices are integrated with your processes, a key component of the level 3 requirements. And then at this point, you can conduct a basic assessment, develop a gap analysis, and report those initial results to SPRS and your partners.
Thank you for listening in on this discussion around the DFARS Interim Rule that puts the CMMC program into effect. To learn more about how C3 Integrated Solutions can help you on your compliance journey, please check us out at c3isit.com. Thanks.